Greetings, this is Fowlinghot. So apparently, Monster Hunter Wilds isn't easier, I'm just better at the game. Cool. I just want to go through a few things, okay? So we're gonna look at some armor.
Got something in mind?
This is the armor you start the game off with. It gives you Divine Blessing. It gives you 3 ranks of Divine Blessing completely. While active, reduces damage taken by 50%. Right?
Done already? Sure.
Okay. Game isn't easy. You just start off with Divine Blessing, like 50% less damage straight from the get-go. Okay, cool. What about weapons?
Anything catch your eye?
Cool. This thing. This was the first weapon I crafted in the game. From the first monster kill. So the first monster you kill is the frog monster, right? The tutorial monster. And after that, you kill this thing. This greatsword does 480 damage, has 140 fire damage, and 5% affinity. It also, because weapons now come preloaded with armor skill, comes with 1 rank of Punishing Draw. What game does that? What Monster Hunter game gives the greatsword of all things, a weapon that already fundamentally does a lot of damage on its own, 140 fire damage from the first monster you kill, and affinity at all? Typically, early Monster Hunter greatswords will, if they give you affinity, it will be negative affinity. And if you do get any level of elemental damage, it won't be 140. This is the first weapon I crafted from a monster in the game. Punishing Draw, 140 fire damage, and affinity. Right from the get-go. But apparently it's just skill. So this is me not needing to learn the map. I'm not even going to focus on what's going on. I don't need to learn the map. I don't need to learn what everything is. Because, yeah, apparently it's just skill and experience. Oh, look, a monster. Right, so I currently have access. I'm not using a insect glaive, but I currently have access to 3 jumping attacks whenever I want, which means easy mounts. As a greatsword user, oh, it's on the floor. As a greatsword user, this will typically result in me mounting it on the second time I attack it, right? Obviously, it's on the floor, so that's not going to happen. So let's mount it. So typically speaking, as a greatsword user, I will be able to mount it either right away or on my second attack. This allows me to have several wounds into the monster. And before anyone comments, I know I'm not fighting the fucking Arkveld or Gormagala or anything like that. This is just to demonstrate. So I'm going to make a bunch of wounds in it. And then I'm going to start off with the tail, so I go throughout its entire body. This is not something to this level you could do in past games, by the way. Mounting's been a thing for a while, but not that much damage. Now that it's on the floor, I don't need to aim anymore. I could aim in completely the wrong direction, and it doesn't matter because we have focus mode. This means that aiming is no longer a requirement, because I can just attack in whatever direction I want. The greatsword is one of the hardest to master, but one of the easiest to learn weapons in the series. This is because the attacks are slow and purposeful. They require charging. This means that in order to get the most out of this weapon, you need to learn the monster. Now this thing uses the basic raptor, like the heavy raptor. So think the Great Jaggy, the Great Baggy. It uses the heavy raptor model. So this really hasn't changed that much over the years. This has been like a Generation 3 kind of raptor for a long, long time. So I don't really need to use the aim thing. This is where the experience thing comes into it. Oh look, I've just been hit. I can immediately call the secret. And on the secret, I can safely sharpen while moving and have no threat to myself whatsoever, and I can heal with a potion. This completely removes any form of danger you'll be in running out of bluntness on your weapon, or basically taking damage. Because when you're knocked on the floor, you can call the secret on the floor, and it will pick you up right as your iframes run out. In prior games, being knocked down like that and being vulnerable for a while would often get you killed. Not anymore, but apparently it's just experience as to why the game is easier. So, let's play the Greatsword like I usually would in past games by not using the focus mode. This means I can only attack in one direction. That's it. And I've missed because of that. Now, if I was using the focus mode, I could have hit that without problems. Let me consistently not learn the map. Right. So now, I don't need to aim anymore. I can just use focus mode and move in the direction. Great thing about the Greatsword, by the way. The wound system, while incredibly fun, by the way, this is part of the problem with Wilds for me, is it is such a mixed bag, because I fucking love the game, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a sycophant. I'm a fan. I'm not a consumer that just wants to consume more product and will be happy with any slot given. I'm a fan. So, I just don't want more content to consume. I will criticize the thing I love in hopes that it gets better. The wound system is fun. It's visceral. But, it's also fucking broken. All the game, I can do that to pretty much any monster, and this will often result in it landing on the ground. The focus mode is so broken, man. Just being to aim in any direction. In prior games, I would have missed that. But because the focus mode is a thing, I can just aim. Now, the experience came in there with World's Edition of the Shoulder Bash. The Shoulder Bash allowed me to basically push my way through an attack I would have otherwise been knocked over with. In prior games, I would have just had to roll out the way. The Shoulder Bash edition from World enabled me to just power my way through that. That's where the experience comes through. And if it was just things like that, you'd be absolutely right. But the sheer amount of power you can have straight from the get-go is why this is so easy. Again, positioning myself again with the focus mode so I go right from the head. Anyone that claims this is just experience is coping, or they have no experience with the series, ironically enough. The difference between low rank and G rank is really stats. It's stats, and that's kind of it. In prior game, the monsters hit harder. That's it. But the fight remains the same. The fight remains the same. Occasionally, you would fight a variant of a monster that has, you know, new moves. But ultimately, the fight remains the same. So this is an experience element of playing these series. Like I've just said, this thing, even though it does have elemental attacks, it uses the Generation 3 Raptor skeleton. So much of its attacks are pretty much exactly the same as that. So as an experienced player, I can watch its skeleton and I can know pretty much exactly what it's going to do. On top of that, I can use the core philosophy in how Monster Hunter is designed. And in order to know what a monster is going to do, I can just watch it. Tail thing again, right? I know what this monster is going to do because I've seen monsters prior. And I know how these things work. Because even though this thing has some fire attacks, fundamentally, its skeleton is the exact same as every other heavy raptor type. So that is an experience element. As a result, the Monster Hunter games are going to get easier over time for you with experience. However, this is the only game that has the secret that removes the ability to take damage, that allows you to safely heal and sharpen at any moment, that allows you to do jump attacks whenever the fuck you want, without being an Insect Glaive user. It's the only game that gives the Greatsword this fucking godly power of not needing to give the slightest shit about aiming. Admittedly, though, if I was closer there, I would have fucking hit that. So positioning is still a thing, but not like it used to be. This is actually what made the Greatsword so difficult to use in past games, because you really did know how to you really did need to know the monster. Not only did you need to know the monster and its moves, you needed to know where they ended. Look at the size of that chicken compared to this chicken. God damn. So yes, experience is definitely a factor of difficulty. It absolutely is. But to completely ignore all the fundamental design changes this game has that makes it easier is to be completely disingenuous, coping, or just ignorant. The game is fundamentally easier. It just is. Right? Now, I'm loving the game. I have over 100 hours in this fucking game at this point. Let me look at Steam. How many hours do I have in this game? 113.7, right? I even have a secondary character on the go. And I am happy to report that some of the issues I have with the story mode have been rectified in a patch without them actually saying so. You do have a little bit more freedom now. A little bit more room to move around during quests, but it is still primarily a railroad. My biggest issue with Wilds, to be perfectly honest, is how railroady the low rank content is. They don't really let you do much of anything except follow NPCs around, listen to dialogue, and slingshot shit as you're doing this. And even then, while you're slingshotting shit, as you're stuck in one of these railroady moments, oftentimes they will completely snap your neck and force you to look in a specific location. Oh shit, that was the gold. Oh, nice. I thought that was smaller than average. That was the gold small, wasn't it? Hey! Nice. I'm glad I decided to do that. Awesome. That's one out the way. Awesome. I'm really happy about that. That worked out nicely. But yeah, the only achievements I have now are, I need to get, really, for the most part, are crowns and, doing 100 things online, which is going to take me a while, because I just play the game solo most of the time. I've been playing it the same way for years. The only time I really want to play with other people is when I'm playing with friends, and I don't have friends that play this game series like I do. So, yeah. But no, I'm doing alright. The amount of time some of them... I've seen some hunter profiles, though, and Jesus Christ, some people have 100% already. I cannot imagine just consistently hunting monsters over and over and over again just for crowns. I've got goals in mind. I'm trying to collect all the greatswords. I want to get a bunch of charms. I want to get the armor for, customization shit. I can't imagine. I've not even gone into builds either. Like, I'm literally just wearing one set of armor. Yeah, I'm just wearing the Arkveld shit. That's all I'm doing. I'm not going to go into builds. Builds were never a thing until World, and I really don't care. And the game isn't really challenging enough for me to really need to do that. I'm powerful enough. Look at all this shit. I'm powerful enough. The amount of damage I do from wounds is just staggering. Literally. But yeah, like, I don't need that, really. The game is easier enough. But... no, like, the difficulty stuff really doesn't bother me. Honestly, what bothers me more than anything else is the cope. It's people saying the game isn't easier, you're just better at the game. No, it is. It is. It is fundamentally easier. There are so many design decisions they've made in this game that has made it fundamentally easier. To be perfectly honest... low rank in this game isn't low rank, it's story mode, because they barely let you do anything except follow NPCs around and listen to dialogue. That's all the game lets you do. It is fundamentally just a big story mode. Low rank in this game is high rank. High rank, what we're in now, is what low rank used to be. It is. This is what low rank used to be. What I'm in now in high rank is what low rank used to be. I urge anyone that thinks you've just got better at the game. Right, if you've got some experience, that is a big guy. I'm getting that. If you've got experience with this series, cool. Go back and play Monster Hunter Tri. Because that was the last game that had, like, that level of difficulty. Go back and play Monster Hunter Tri. You have less tools at your disposal. The weapons aren't as powerful early on as they are in this game. You don't have the whole world level armor skill system. You don't have the base 50 defense. You don't have Divine Blessing right from the get-go. Go back and play Monster Hunter Tri. As an experienced World, Rise, or Wilds player, go back and play Monster Hunter Tri. Then come to me and tell me that's experience, right? Do that for me. Have some experience, ironically, have some experience at the series first, and then come and tell me that it's experience. Because obviously it is. To a certain degree, it is. This, again, this is using the Great Jaggy skeleton. You'll know Great Jaggy if you've played those games, right? It moves the same way. So experience is going to play a role, right? Barif is a Generation 3 monster, and if you've played a lot of World, that will be a good indicator, because Barif in Generation 3, low rank, was hard. Barif in Tri specifically, not Free U, because Free U gives you a base level of 50 defense. On top of that, it's also easier in Free U to get better weapons, right? Play Tri specifically, because that was the last game before they started making these caveats. That base 50 defense, by the way, that was in the Western only version of the game. The Japanese version of Free U didn't have that, because, you know, Western gamers are funny in that Western gamers complain about difficulty, but they also want to act like they're highly skilled at the game. The funny thing, a great example of this is Dark Souls. How many Dark Souls players simultaneously say that they enjoy hard games while also claiming that Dark Souls is easy for them? Because it's not about enjoying challenge, it's about looking like you're a skilled person. It's about ego more than anything else. Western gamers are hilarious with that. They don't like challenging games for the most part. They just like to say that they like challenging games. I do not play Monster Hunter for the challenge. I play Monster Hunter because the core combat and the core loop of hunt, carve, make stuff out of those monsters, and hunt bigger stuff is the single most satisfying loop in video game history. On top of that, the core combat in this series is the most satisfying combat in video game history. The reason why I have over 100 hours in this game at this point, despite there not really being much to Wilds in all honesty, is because that core gameplay is unfucking believably satisfying. And the main reason I've been playing Monster Hunter for a long time, right? That is why I'm enjoying the game, because it still has that core after low rank at least. Low rank is just story mode. All you do is you follow NPCs around, you listen to dialogue, and it is the antithesis of a Monster Hunter experience. Why they've done this, I honestly don't know, because the example I keep using, it's like, I love Dark Souls and I love Animal Crossing, but when I buy Dark Souls, I do not want an Animal Crossing experience. Just like when I buy Animal Crossing, I do not want a Dark Souls experience. When I buy Monster Hunter, I do not want a Telltale experience. I do not want constant dialogue and narrative. I want to hunt monsters. I don't want to play NPC follower. I want to play Monster Hunter. And the ironic thing is, you don't even hunt in this series anymore. There's no tracking, there's no, well, there's paintballing, but you don't need it. There's no tracking, there's no hunting, there's no learning the map, there's no learning where the monsters go. There's none of that shit. You just jump on Uber Raptor and it takes you where you need to go. Like, that's it. You know? It's Monster Slayer. Low rank is NPC follower. High rank has the difficulty of low rank in past games, and it's Monster Slayer. There's no hunting involved. It's crazy. There's no hunting involved. I don't think that was the Golden Crown for Lodge, but it might be. We'll find out. But, I am enjoying the game. I am. Like, this isn't me being a hater. This is me being a long time Monster Hunter fan. And the difference between a fan and a fanboy is a fanboy just wants more product to consume. and doesn't care what slop they get so long as it has the right identity slapped on it. They'll eat and eat and eat and eat and eat until they're fat and have a heart attack. Whereas a fan will criticize, right? A fan will criticize, and a lot of people will point towards the sales as well. I want to address that right away. Do you know what the best-selling Pokemon games are? The recent ones. Pokemon Sword and Shield broke records. I think most people will agree that that's the worst game in the series, right? That broke records. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that broke records. Now, I genuinely believe that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet would be the best game in the series if it was polished. And if they added voice acting. Now, I actually don't want voice acting in I don't want voice acting in Pokemon. It doesn't need it. Pokemon doesn't need voice acting. But when you're adding mouth movements and not giving it voices, it's weird. When you're adding mouth movements and not giving it voice acting, it's weird. If you want to do that, just do the classic JRPG thing. Dialogue box and a cute picture of the character in a pose. Just do the fucking, the visual novel style for Pokemon. That'd work. If you don't want to do voice acting, do the visual novel style. That would definitely work. Stop with the awkward mouth movements without sound coming from it. But that's an argument for a different day. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield broke records in how they sold. Are they close to being the best games in the series? Are they? Are they even remotely close to being the best games in the series? Or are the best games in the series years ago? And I'm not talking about Red and Blue. The Gen 1 is the fuck. Saying that Red and Blue is the best game in the series is like saying Monster Hunter PlayStation 2 is the best game in the series. It's not. It's far from it. It's just nostalgic. The best game in Monster Hunter, as far as I'm concerned, the best games, my personal favorite is For You and Generations. I've not played Generations Ultimate, so I'm imagining that's better. But I've only ever played Generations, not Gen U. But Gen and Monster Hunter 4U were my favorite games in the series. But prior to that, I'd say that Monster Hunter Freedom Unite was the peak for many years. Free U was also fucking fantastic. Generations was amazing. And Generations is my argument for people who say that the game needs G rank in order to have enough content. No, that's a modern game equivalent. Monster Hunter does not need G rank to have enough content. The reason why people like me complained about the lack of content in Rise, and even to a lesser extent Base Game World, was because they're live service games now. This was a series that used to release complete and then add a little bit extra later on down the line. You get a little bit of extra stuff every month. You get a few funny event quests that would give you, like, fun little rewards, the kind of stuff that they now sell as microtransactions. You would get, like, hunter profile backgrounds and titles. You'd maybe get the odd Palico with weird colors. You'd get, like, the cross-promo stuff. You'd get a little bit of that every month. Tiny, tiny little bit of extra shit. But the game was complete at launch. In Monster Hunter World onwards, the game isn't complete at launch, and you have to wait years upon years upon years for it to be finished. And with that includes a lot of balance issues because the games have to catch up with the player basically making builds. Builds were never really a thing. They happened in very niche areas. Such as getting into G rank, you'd want like a mixed build to get as much sharpness as possible in some games, right? Or certain weapons, like often the heavy bowgun, were so powerful with specific combinations. But for the most part, you had your base set and you gem out any negative traits, and that would be it, right? The most powerful shit that you could get was your most powerful weapon and the armor with some useful skills to your weapon and elemental resistance. That's how it would work. World is a great example for this, actually. I loved the armor skill system changes in World. Because what that did was it simplified the armor changes system while also adding a colossal amount of depth if the player chose to use it. It was brilliant. It was also ripe for abuse. And thanks to the collective autism of the internet, we ended up getting, like, insanely powerful builds. And this had a massive, like, a weird effect. You had the people that would follow the crazy high damage builds on YouTube. And this would result in people making crazy potential high damage builds, in which they'd get one shot if they didn't play it perfectly. So this resulted in people diving into combat, dealing crazy amount of damage, and then caughting. Because they weren't... Their main primary focus was damage. Because they got it into their heads that this was a player versus player game, and that they needed to out-DPS the rest of the group. Rather than it being a co-op game, and us needing to work as a team to take down the monster. This was part of the kind of like the community change that happened when World came out. The community changed. But because of these crazy combinations that the collective autism of the internet managed to have, the devs needed to start designing monsters to counteract the sheer amount of power players were obtaining. And this resulted in massively overtuned monsters. At that point, you needed these builds. And this was further exemplified in Sunbreak. Certain monsters in Sunbreak were so relentless that you needed Evade Extender. At that point, a fucking idiot. At that point, the armor skill system wasn't an option. It was a requirement, which changed how the games were played. And that was when Monster Hunter truly became a live service series, because you were receiving less at launch. They were selling a bunch of microtransactions in the process, and then it became a power creep situation in which balance was completely fucked. Prior games, it was a journey. You started off at the bottom and you worked up and up and up and up and up, and eventually you finished the fucking game. Now it's a live service. And now that it's a live service, it starts off incomplete. You have to wait months upon years for the extra stuff. Then by the time that happens, it becomes an arms race between the player's ability to make powerful sets and the devs making overpowered monsters. Balance is shut out the window, and the game just becomes like overpowered, overly skilled, like overly armor skilled hunters versus overly beefed up monsters. And the core design philosophy changes. I am willing to bet this will happen in Wilds. Wilds is so brain dead at the moment. Like, Gore Magala is the only real challenge in the game, and that's because it has one mechanic that will fuck you up if you're not paying attention. And because of the design changes in this game, they reward poor playstyles. A greatsword user that isn't focusing on positioning and is instead just using the focus mode for aiming is going to become way more reckless, and then Gore Magala is going to teach them what that will result in. Again, it happened to me with my Gore Magala video. I caught it twice, which is unusual for me. Because the game has just taught me to be fucking reckless. And Gore Magala was like, no, fuck you. I have a mechanic that will punish you for that. Not just beefed up stats, but it has a mechanic that will punish you for that. The game is fundamentally easier. It just is. And I think the problem with me as a long-time player, I have to just rectify at this point that this isn't Monster Hunter anymore. Monster Hunter has gone through 2 iterations. The first iteration was the true survival game. This was Generation 1 and early Generation 2. The true survival Monster Hunter game was the PlayStation 2 era. Base Monster Hunter was Monster Hunter Freedom right all the way up until Tri. That is the Monster Hunter that I know the most. Monster Hunter, at its peak, in my personal opinion, with my tastes, was actually when the game started to get a little easier. Monster Hunter 3U, Monster Hunter 4U, Monster Hunter Generations, and Gen U. That, in my opinion, was the peak of the series. That added... That level of the series had so much content, and because they made the game easier, it also mean that someone like me, who didn't really have friends that played the game, could solo all of the content, for the most part. I still got to the point where all of those games where I just outright couldn't solo. I didn't have the skill, or I just didn't have the stats to do it on my own. But it also meant I could get through most of the game. And because the core gameplay of Monster Hunter was so good, it didn't bother me that I could never finish it, because the core gameplay was fun, and there was so much content right from the get-go that it didn't bother me. I still had hundreds of hours worth of gameplay right at launch, and I played it all on my own. That, to me, was the peak of the series. It had the perfect balance between difficulty, accessibility, and content. Then World came out. And World was a breath of fresh air just because of how different it was. There were these big, beautiful environments to explore. Graphically, it was completely different. The monsters look real. It focused on this ecological, environmental design, which, as someone who has loved animals entire life and was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, it felt like World was made for me. I loved World. Yes, the game got easier, and it got easier because they added fundamental design changes. The UI was way better, which, by the way, is one of the worst things about Wild. The UI in Wild is so crazy convoluted that I have no idea where half of these menus even are. Holy shit, the UI in this game is bad. They did such a much better job with this in World. It is crazy bad. It's unbelievable. Come here. Come here, you speedy bastard. Got ya. But the UI is really bad in this game. Like, the menu system specifically is just so awkward and convoluted. I'm over 100 hours in and I still don't know how to use it properly. Like, I still struggle with it. It's crazy bad. But in World, the UI was much improved. They got rid of a lot of the bloat. So, you didn't have to carry around pickaxes. You didn't have to carry around paintballs. You didn't have to carry around bait for fish. You didn't have to do any of that. They improved... They basically made it where you could just focus on the fun bits of the game. You didn't. There was much less basic prep, right? So the first generation of Monster Hunter was more about that prep. It was about survival, preparing yourself, and going out to hunt. If you didn't do the prep, you would fail, outright. Monster Hunter. I'm not going to say Generations because these overlap. The second version, the second major change was the more emphasis on less emphasis on survival, but there was still emphasis on prep. The third iteration was my personal favorite iteration. There was more of a focus on the hunts. You still had to prep, but it was mainly just a boss rush at that point, where you went after hunt after hunt after hunt after hunt, and they also sprinkled in some small monster hunts as well as some fishing quests for just a little sprinkling of, like, you know, change of pace every now and again. The last iteration, the current iteration, was the casualization iteration, in which they've got rid of a lot. They've removed a lot of the skill ceiling of the weapons. They've removed a lot of the preparation. Like, they've removed prep entirely for the most part. And they turned the game into kind of like a live service series, in which they're not complete at the get-go. To me, the last iteration was the best. It was the peak. Because it was easier, and that's how you know I'm not someone then that's complaining about the difficulty in this game because I want to seem like an elite player. No, I'm complaining about the difficulty because it's got too much at this point. It's at the point now where it is kind of brain dead. You know, the hardest challenge in Monster Hunter Wilds, for me, unironically, I'm not even joking here, It's catching fucking spear tuner. Spear tuner, fishing. Oh my god, that's difficult. That is the hardest thing in this game for me. But the major issue with Wilds is really its story. Its story, and it's the stuff that comes inherent with being a live service game. That's the issues. But ultimately, I am enjoying the core gameplay of the game. I'm enjoying the core loop. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But I'm just not a consumer. I'm a fan. I can criticize the game. The game does... I don't feel like I'm making the game lesser by criticizing it. I don't think I should be ruining anyone's fun by criticizing the game. And if I am, then I'm bringing attention to something that you're just trying to ignore. If I'm ruining the fun of this game by complaining about things that I think are bad with it, while also loving the game, then if that's ruining the experience for you, then I'm just pointing something out that you're trying to forget is there. And if it's that big of a deal for you, then maybe you should join me in complaining about it. And then maybe they'll improve it. And the next iteration will be better. Because the weird thing is, a lot of the things in this game that make the game easier are things that I like. I love the secret. I think this little bugger is awesome. I mean, admittedly, I love raptors in general, especially the feathered variety, but I think this little guy is awesome. I love him. I think he's great. But he does make the game easier, inherently, with how he's designed. He just does. There's so many little things like that. I love the more focus on ecology and how all of these animals fit in with their environment. You know, I do love the whole, we're not here to kill, we're here to study. The problem with it is, we're here to kill. You know, we're here to study in the very early British, you know, explorer era. We're here to study wildlife. Stand there while I shoot down a bunch of birds so I can pin them to a tree and sketch them. I'm here to study wildlife. Let me kill this endangered animal so I can eat it with all my friends before it goes extinct completely. You know, we're that kind of studier. We're the early British kind of explorer scientists and ecologists who aren't really here to preserve shit. We're here to dominate the land, capture it, and eat it. That's what we're here for. And I wish we would just drop the pretense at this point. This is not an ecological game. This is the exact opposite. And you've just gotta, rectify that in your head, that there's no way of making Monster Hunter Monster Studier without it being a little bit hypocritical, right? But I do like how they're trying to add more of a realistic ecological element to the game. It makes it more immersive. But this game's story takes that over. It takes it over. It takes it over. Low rank is just story with a little bit of hunting sprinkled in. It is highly, highly restrictive all the way through. It actively stops you from hunting. It stops you from exploring. It even stops you from gathering with the slingshot on your mount because the camera forces your perspective in different directions all the time. Wilds is really, really, really good if you're brand new to the series and have only ever played World. I think if you want to hear like a really good review of this game, like a really good, honest, genuine review of this game, watch Pro Jared's. Pro Jared's is a veteran like me. He's been playing since the first game. And his review is one of the... Because the thing is, Wilds is not a bad game. It is a really good game. But when you have the knowledge and the experience of prior entries, you're seeing how much this game is faltering. How much the series is completely changing direction to not remotely resemble what it used to be. And that's already happened. Like, if you're an early, like a first iteration fan, the series has been dead to you for years. It really has. Like, that is a complaint. Some people really miss the early Generation 1 style of Monster Hunter. The true survival game style. A lot of people really miss that. But they are in the minority. But, like, you know, for a long time. But a lot of people wish we could go back to that. But no. I I have real mixed feelings about Monster Hunter Wilds because I am loving it. I really am. The core gameplay, when you get into high rank, which has the difficulty of low rank in past games, the core gameplay is so fun. The hits are still so visceral. Hunting monsters and making shit out of them is still the most satisfying loop. It really is. It's so good. But why have we focused so much on story? It's Monster Hunter. We're not playing a Telltale game here. We're not playing an RPG here. I know a lot of people call Monster Hunter an RPG, but it's not. We're not playing an RPG here. I play primarily RPGs. I know what an RPG is. This isn't an RPG. But no. I'm so mixed feelings about Monster Hunter Wilds. It's crazy. I am less bugged by the difficulty getting brain dead as I am the player base refusing to acknowledge that it's easier. It is. It is easier. And it's not just me being experienced with the game. Like I explained at the start of this video before I went on to my usual ramble, there are fundamental design decisions that have made this game easier. Alright? There are. But the core gameplay is still great. It's just bogged down by the story mode low rank. And I'll admit, one of the big changes I've had in this game is I've actually not been using only the greatsword. I've been using the lance. On my secondary character, I've been using the dual blades. Why? Because it's just not as satisfying with the greatsword anymore. Like, it's satisfying, but it's also getting repetitive because I just don't have to think in this game. I don't, like, I can play way better than I've shown you in this video. Legitimately. This is the only game series, legitimately the only game series in which I will unironically say I'm good at. I am not good at video games. I am shite at video games. I am good at Monster Hunter. Right? But I can play this series, I can play this game like barely paying any attention. And I can get through it without problems. That's not right. You know, I don't mind the game getting easier. It's still visceral. I'm still going to enjoy it. But it's a bit brain dead at this point. It really is. When the hardest challenge for me is legitimately, I am not joking, when the hardest challenge for me in this game is fishing, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Look, I don't love hard games. I liked Dark Souls when I got better at it. I hated Dark Souls first. I don't want a brutally difficult game. A game being difficult isn't fun for me. The gameplay itself has to be good. I could so easily get a cheat mode into Dark Souls and enter God mode on Dark Souls and actually enjoy the game more, right? Difficulty isn't the factor here, but when the game is so brain dead and everything is in your corner and the game is just handing you victory after victory after victory, something's wrong. When even I'm saying the game is too easy, something's wrong. And I'm not a game designer. I don't know how that they would change this. I don't. But they do give you way too much power right away. They do. They give you way too much power right away. And the game actively teaches you terrible habits because of the tools that they give you right from the get-go. And this is resulting in bad players. Like, really bad players. I've only gone online a few times, but I have never in my life seen so many bad players. Even, like, really bad players. People who just charge in, attack, and, like, immediately die. They're in high rank at this point, and they haven't learned basics, because they've just summoned the SOS all the time and been carried. They're using the focus system. Monsters are on the floor constantly. I mean, think about it. As a greatsword user, the monster is on the floor for me constantly. Imagine if there are 3 other hunters in the game. The monster can't do shit. And if you're doing a dual hunt, the monsters are even weaker then. They need some design changes. And it can't just be beefing up the monster's stats. That's lazy difficulty design. They need some fundamental design changes to balance out the sheer amount of power they're giving you right from the get-go. Because I am someone that will happily play games on baby mode But even I'm having a little bit of an issue with this, with how just overpowered you get. And it's not like saying, oh, well, don't use it. Why? Why must I have to play a Pokemon Nuzlocke in order to have any level of challenge? Why must I need to do that? Why must I go out of my way with self-imposed rules in order for a game to have balance? Come on. If I've got tools, I'm going to use them.